welcome everybody. This is a follow-up of sorts to our Meet the Team podcast with Sam, who has graciously once again given us a bit of his time to discuss all things lore as related to Ember Sword. This episode is going to be a foundation of the lore, as it were. We're going to go through it in broad strokes at Sam's discretion, and we're going to glean something excellent. That much I'm certain of. So, Sam, thanks for taking the time to do this.
Hey, my pleasure.
Sweet. Okay, so I have your list of questions pulled up, and let us begin. First off, what are your personal influences when it comes to Ember Sword?
Well, the thing to know about Ember Sword is that though it looks like a very fantastical game, it is actually in a sci-fi setting, as in a setting that runs parallel to our own world, our own universe, where things kind of deviated a long time ago, 1980s, and so things, come from a sci-fi perspective, and for that, I looked at different properties that are more sci-fi oriented that can be emulated or at least admired and to appear fantastical. And with that, I felt a strong inspiration from sources such as Independence Day, where humanity is up against aliens that are wield such technology that they almost seem godlike, like they're wielding magic in a way, or Titan AE, or even Destiny when it comes to video games. And that's where I found my greatest inspirations for lore, because when you play the game, you're going to be feeling like you're playing a fantasy game, and the great thing about sci-fi is that it allows you to give a real-world explanation without being asked to actually build everything yourself and, make sure that the invention is up to snuff. And, so I don't have to build a flying car to prove that Ember Sword exists. And as a disclaimer, there are no flying cars in Ember Sword, so don't you ask, people.
Yet! There are no flying cars yet!
Yet.
It's a live game. World's your oyster.
Yeah. And, with that in mind, the great thing is that with Ember Sword, people, they're going to have that experience where, they can still do things like, heal, they can still, move around in a great quest and not have a horse or something to help them along the way, and, or a flying car. And that's kind of because it's been established that this is a dystopian world. It looks pretty and everything, but it's had a hard go at things. So, it allows me to really just get in there and not call it a fantasy game, while also, it being very flashy and colorful and something that, you could almost perceive as being fantasy. So definitely the big ones are like Titan AE, Independence Day, and other things that have actually been critically panned for their narrative values, but at the same time appreciated and have come to garner a cult following. So
Like what?
Let's not. Like Titan AE, for example, and Independence Day, even though it was financially successful, people have issues with the whole computer virus aspect, and so far as I know, there isn't a computer virus aspect in this, but
Again,
maybe there will be.
Come on, man. Who would hate Welcome to Earth Punch? Come on. It's a fantastic piece of media. The sequel was fantastic, dumb fun as well.
Yeah, and I'll have people welcoming you to Thanibus and Punch. I can. So there you go, guys.
Yeah, everybody on Discord, add the designer so they know that the tutorial needs to be you getting punched in the face by Will Smith. I'm curious, have you played Horizon Zero Dawn?
I haven't actually. There was a period of time where I kind of stepped away from gaming to
You
focus
mentioned, yeah.
on other. Yeah. So I missed a lot of great classics for a few years.
Because Horizon is almost exactly what you describe, a game that's very tech heavy, but it's got a tribal motif owing to the societies in the game being very tribal inspired. And it's a fantastic blend of the mystical and the technological. So it's just
Yeah.
and it's also one of my favorite games. That's what I was asking, really.
Yeah. There are like this universe runs parallel to ours, so there are going to be a lot it still follows a lot of the same rules, but just little like divots that are not there in ours, and as you know, just a little crack in the windshield can eventually cause it to shatter.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
yeah, so that's kind of where we are with this. I mean, people are probably like, "Hey, I've been looking on Wikipedia, and where is Thanibus?" And it's like, "Oh, just pull out your telescope and look at Jupiter." No, there's a reason that's there.
Sweet. Well, speaking of the universe, what is your precise process for developing this story in this universe?
Well, actually, I don't. No, I'm just kidding.
Blank slate. Surprise! We're making Minecraft.
um, my process is actually I start with characters. The
Mhm.
characters are the bedrock. It's the bedrock is not the bedrock, but the characters are. Because you come up with someone who has a function in the world, like for someone who will fix your armor, for instance, or maybe a President Arch Claudius, all the way over in Ediso. That like these people, they're there, and they actually are my greatest tools for telling a story, because I can just lay down a few seeds here and there, and then I'll develop like hundreds of words for each single character for a full backstory. Because I mean, the way I see it, you can go anywhere and you can find out the backstory of everyone in an innocuous small town in the country. And if you learned everyone's backstory, you'd find that there are a million things going on in this part of the world where it appears dead. And with that, I was able to form the story for Ember Sword excuse me, my cat is biting my microphone. I was able to form the story for Ember Sword very organically. It's based on how someone with backstory would react in these situations. And yes, I started with a broad overview. It was about 3 pages long. Ooh, but from there, I was able to consider everyone who inhabits that world, and I mean everyone, and just the things that you need in a standard MMO, and the things that just branch off from the base story. And then now I have like hundreds of pages on characters, and that's been the way I've been telling the story, is through the characters. You then could build a world around them and fill it in.
Right. That's really that's really cool. Actually, I've never thought of that approach as something that was really possible. Because every time I've tried to build a world, I've gone with story first when I dungeon master something, for example. So
Yeah.
it's interesting to know that that this is a fantastic approach. Well, I guess speaking of the characters, where do you find inspiration? What do you draw inspiration from to create those characters and in turn the story?
Uh, there's a bit of a variety. I'd like to tell you a little bit of a story.
Shoot,
there,
yeah.
there's a character, the leader of Severand. Her name is not disclosed at this moment. There's going to be a lot of build up to that. Actually, she's going to be a focal point of the story. And I actually came up with. Well, actually, it's kind of, I'm not sure if I did come up with her because she was in my subconscious. On a football trip in my 8th grade year, I had this dream, and it was based in Warcraft 3. Like, I saw it as in the setting of the world editor, something that I'd create, and in it there's this just beautiful scene where there's this confrontation between, like, not really, like, the opposite of star-crossed, like, waylaid lovers, and they realize that they have different perspectives on life, and that experiences have drawn them in totally opposite directions, that they're technically enemies now. And it was such a powerful dream, but I could not recreate it at all in Warcraft 3 or anything after that. It's like, this is such a good story that my 13-year-old self came up with. And that was actually, like, as with Ember Sword, I've actually had the opportunity to bring this scene to life, and that was where the basis for that character came from. And I feel so happy about that. And when I was first conceptualizing like the story for Ember Sword, I told Sage, about this story idea, and he actually he loved it. He said it was powerful, and I kind of that was where one big story element came from. And with a lot of the other characters, it's kind of I kind of look at as, I've already, established. I already have what I need for the very basic overview of a story. Like Solarwood is it's all about academics, and that it's a little bit of a liberal society, and I conceptualized who the head of that would be, and it turned out to be a middle-aged fellow, who's kind of rotund and soft-spoken, so he can talk to the people from the Republic who are admonishing Solarwood for kind of challenging the edicts of not pursuing higher education. And with that, I was able to build a character out of that. And it's just like, from there, it's a ripple effect. And, you have the middleman right there, the guy who can talk to everyone, who would be a perfect leader. And then, you'll have the more extreme people on other sides. So it's kind of been a ripple effect of, what big people need. And from there, it's kind of like, the ripples have spread across the pond, and now Thanabus is filled with hundreds of people who feel like it's almost like a symbiotic thing, where as the planet builds the people build the planet.
So in a sense, you come up with a couple of characters that are drawn from wherever, and that essentially sends a shockwave through your imagination, and you create this whole universe. In a sense,
Yeah,
the inspiration for the characters themselves.
yeah. And
Oh, that's so awesome!
every little person that you come across in Ember Sword, I've spent the last 2 years coming up with their full backstory, like what kind of upbringing they had, and if they faced a depression, if they liked playing in trash, or if they were a little psychopath growing up. And everyone has a story and they will always be referenced throughout it. That's the perfect thing, is that everyone is connected in some way. We can do the that was it. The 7 steps of Kevin Bacon, was it? It's kind of like that. Everyone, like 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon, I believe. Yeah. That's kind of what we have going on in Ember Sword, where people know each other, and their past plays into their decisions, and that's shaped the world around them.
Sweet. Flipping the script a bit, we talked broad strokes about the characters in the story. What about the antagonists? Specifically, I guess, the bestiary. How do you approach, narrative-wise, designing creatures for that bestiary?
I uh, I'll get back to the term antagonist because I have a few thoughts of that. But yeah,
Hell
when
yeah.
we come up with the beasts, it's actually about what what the world needs, like, because yes, the first kind of beast that we delved into was the gruff, a boar man, a big thing bigger than a man who, is pig-like and will attack you. But it's like you can't have a boar man in every little crevice of Thanibus. Things would get boring very fast. So, it's kind of like, what do things need? And a lot of things actually, they come from like, not only just from a technical standpoint, but also inspiration, like the Urkador. Those are basically the ghouls of Ember Sword, and you'll find them in like the dark recesses of the earth, in dark locations where you already are chilled out, like by walking into a location, hopefully, and then you come across them, and these ghouls come about. And where that came from was I just thought of something that it has all the wrong attributes, like it no eyes in its sockets, no lips, no teeth, and no genitalia, and just and claws on its hand. And it was a disturbing concept, and it irked me. And there came the Urkador, and that's how things play out. What the necessity is, like what we're missing from the game. And also, uh, we like visually, we follow the rules of the planet, of the, like, moon, I guess. That's what Thanibus is. We follow the world. We follow the rules of the world, which establish that the bestiary, it's composed of very similar, like, the same animal kingdom that we have, but Thanibus also has a quality of mutation, where things are constantly swirling in this primordial soup, and things change very quickly. And so everything that is Earth-like on Thanibus, everything will have a twist. Like a bunny will have too big of ears, for example, and that's where we come from when we design creatures. Like that things have kind of gone askew in every way, but they don't all have to be scary. And yeah, and if I may, about the term antagonist.
Please, yeah, I'm really curious,
Yeah.
actually.
Yes, there are things that are going to attack you. There are people, like creatures as well, that you will need to put down, put out of their misery. But what's wonderful is that we internally don't really see it as there being necessarily a bad guy. Like I know who is the bad guy from my perspective, but the others, they'll say, "Hey, I'm kind of rooting for him. He's interesting," and that's just a little bit of a digression. I'll get back on course, but
No,
yeah.
please,
So
I'm really interested in this notion since a lot of RPGs I've been playing as of late, especially Wasteland 3, uh, play with this notion that everybody's the hero of their own story, right? And that creates such interesting dynamics where there pretty much isn't a right answer ever in what you have to do. And it's through this ambiguity, the story grips you further because it just feels like real people doing things
yeah,
that they consider right.
yeah, and like you like if, for instance, let's look at the lore of Ember Sword. Everything is based around this, well, huge, actually, not little, huge interaction with Starjin, this godlike entity that arrived in our solar system, and he said that he was coming to answer a threat, by wayward transmissions, and you know we had been so wayward with our transmissions. It's like, ah, oh, damn, this guy's here to bust our balls, and look, and his arrival and his demise, his attack on Jupiter, it just absolutely shattered the way of life, and but to him, he probably saw that he was his own protagonist, and I like to look at it that way. That there's no one who who goes into things going, "Mwah,"
Yeah, there's no
you know,
mustachioed
yeah,
monster.
yeah. Uh, no Dick Dastardly in this, so
Oh, darn it.
I'm so sorry.
It depends on which Dick Dastardly we're talking about, actually, because DC bought Hanna-Barbera, or at least the rights to some of their characters, and they made a Wacky Racers comic book, which is insane. It's Mad Max, essentially. Highly recommend to read. I digress. Anyway,
Yep.
just to round this out, we mentioned a decent bit of inspirations, which movies you got it from, some of the ideas for the game from. I wanted to touch upon sort of the gaming industry. After all, we're making a video game. What games and studios do you look to draw inspiration from Ember Sword? What games and studios do you believe in, really?
Well, even though the last podcast I kind of lambasted Bungie with Destiny, there's a lot of positivity going for that game. There's a lot to admire about that game. I have some fond memories of playing it. So on the commercial, like the big commercial side of things, I think you look to things that really just move you, even if it's not all the way. Even if just a portion of it. I look to things like that. But what I will say about the industry is that things have very much shifted throughout my nearly 30 years on this planet. I say that like I'm from Mars. But you know what? When I was younger, like when I was in the 90s, it seemed like there were not really big corporations running games. Games were built by medium-sized companies. There's only in the 2000s it felt like that. We started developing the Activision problem, which has now become the Activision Blizzard problem, very unfortunately. And that kind of inspired an exodus of those employees to form Dreamhaven, and that's actually where I see the future of the industry. Things like Dreamhaven, there will be companies that will never be as successful as the big dogs, like commercially, like they will not be as successful financially. Uh, but the important thing is it's independent, and that's the heart of it. I see the future of the industry like where I look to inspiration, where I feel like, hey, I can do this too. I see it from like people like Edmund McMillan with the Super Meat Boy and the Binding of Isaac. I see it from like studios like Crafting Legends with Death Trash, which is a game that's been in development for the last 5 years. That just that one has ensnared my mind. I couldn't stop thinking about it when I came across it briefly, and I almost went mad trying to find the where it was again until I came across it. And then developers like Pelican 13 with he was working with Nicholas, the company Nicholas, on 90s Super GP, and now he recently released the Takeover, and that's just really where I feel like people need to look for inspiration. Where I look for inspiration, that's really where I feel like the team as a whole, we all look for inspiration
Mm-hmm.
on the small side of things. We're not going to ever sell out, that like we've talked about, like that we're not going to be, just a branch of some big corporation. It's going to be independent from start and hopefully never finish. and and like yeah, like the one big company that I can pardon, because I still see that indie spirit captured, is Valve. Because
Yeah.
they bring in the modders like Ice Frog, to make games with the indie heart, but the triple A polish. And you know, but overall, I feel like the future, where we all need to look is to the indie side of things, and yeah, but there will always be the big corporations because there are plenty of people who will always want the next Call of Duty and
Yeah.
whatnot. But I think that if people want to feel the love that they had for gaming in the 90s, that is hard to it's there again, because everything becomes just
A
a strange,
product.
yeah, like an addiction that, or a drug. Like, that's what it seems like a commercial game is. Like, if you want to find that love again, you go for those indie games. Look at what is hot, and maybe look at what's not hot. Look at what's kind of just flying under the radar, but it has captured your imagination. That's where I see the industry. That's the beating heart of it now.
That is a very hopeful way of looking at it. I've definitely been guilty over the past couple of months, especially at being incredibly disheartened at the condition of the industry. What with all of the awful things Take-Two are doing, all of the garbage Activision Blizzard's trying to push through. It's nice to know that the other perspective exists, that hopefully we're headed towards a future where gaming becomes a bit smaller again and creativity shines instead of the pursuit of profit.
Yeah, we don't, individually, we don't need a huge amount of money. We don't need more money, and everything with the big side of the industry is more money. And I am fine with a highly saturated market, because that means that people are trying hard, and if we want more money, we're gonna try harder. If we want that continued business. So that's where my head is.
Well, with that wistful note and anecdote, I guess this is the end of this Lorecast, the first Lorecast, hopefully. Thank you, Sam, for taking the time to do this again. I would love to delve deeper into every aspect we discussed today, whether it be characters, the story overall, the bestiary. Any one of these can be a fantastic podcast in its own right, so hopefully that we can do this again in the future.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Svetlin.
Hell yeah. Awesome. Cool. Well, see you guys next time, and thank you for listening. Hey you made it to the end. Congratulations! That must mean you like us enough to want more, right? Well, good news! We're all over the internet. Go to embersword.com and subscribe to our newsletter for a chance to play the game early, as well as the latest interesting tidbits on the game and the team. Join our lovely Discord community over at discord.gg/embersword. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at PlayEmberSword for regular updates on what we're up to. And remember the basics. Drink water, be kind to each other, and spread the word about Ember Sword.